Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Hi.
Hi, Amy and John and Heather.
We missed you last night, Janet, at the book club. You went to Mincha, and Merrily was waiting for you, but
Yeah, I went on. By the time I got on, no one was there.
yeah, no, it was about 45 minutes. The thing, did you read the book?
I read parts of it.
Because I didn't even get it. I put my name on the waiting list at the library and never even got it. So I asked questions about it. It's probably long and very dense. We have two books for the next book club, which is in July. Sue Cable is going to buy them in memory of her daughter. She's going to surprise us. She didn't tell us which one she's going to get, but they're
Don't
very,
we meet
very
every other month?
well. I don't know. We have to do July because she's going to be leaving for Florida, and in August I'm also going to hopefully get to Israel. So we decided it's in 6 weeks. It should be fine, and it's not such a long book, whichever it is. There's
Right.
one book called 90 Seconds, which is the whole story of Hatzalah,
Yeah.
and then the other one is it's the fourth book in a series of book with little stories and vignettes about Jewish people who've been through certain things that it should be very interesting, but we're not sure which one she's going to select.
Thank you,
So
Amy.
is the book club on Zoom?
Yes, it's only on Zoom.
Okay. I
It's
thought it was.
It's Eitz
Okay.
Chaim's book club. It's only
No,
on
because
Zoom.
I've seen it and the books look interesting. I just
Mhm.
haven't. I thought we had to get to Eitz Chaim, and I hadn't.
Oh, no. They don't do anything really there. It's all online. But so
What do you
Okay.
mean they don't do anything really there? We have services.
well, yeah, no, but the clubs and these kinds
Oh,
of
yeah.
things, the talks, the sip of Torah and everything, that's
Right.
on Zoom.
Right.
Okay, good. That's
Okay,
good.
good morning, everyone.
Good morning,
Boker
Rabbi.
Tov.
Morning.
Good morning.
I want to wish a special refuah shlema to Dan Shimshak, who is joining us somehow, some way from, I think, your hospital room, if I'm not mistaken, given the
nice.
background of your image. But you feeling okay, Dan? I'm not sure if you can unmute. I think you're still muted.
What happened? He was fine on Shabbos.
He's muted. Yeah. He can't unmute probably.
He's trying.
Okay, well, Dan, if you are able to talk, we happy to hear you, but until then, we will just be amazed that you're joining us from your hospital bed.
Wow.
And that's the definition of devotion right there.
I think he's frozen. Yeah. There we go.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, refuah shalema, Dan.
Refuah shalema.
Janie, you're also muted.
Okay, I'm going to share screen. I also put the sources already in the chat. Okay. Okay, so we're going to dive into Parshat Shlach. And we think we know the story, as it's a well-known narrative, familiar plot to us all, that Moshe sent out 12 men to spy out the land. 10 come back with a negative report. The land is good, but unconquerable. And that's because the people are too strong. Their cities are fortified. They are strong and large. And only 2 of the 12, Kalev and Hoshea, who becomes Yehoshua, took a different view that the land is good, but we can win, and we can win because Hashem is on our side and we will not fail. So on this basic, reading that we're familiar with, it seems to be that the difference between them is about emunah, about faith, about confidence that whether or not Hashem will follow through on his promise to bring the people and deliver them to the land of Israel. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, in his piece this week, takes a less conventional approach to the story of the spies and puts forward a few pieces to help us unlock or solve the mystery of what went wrong beyond just the function of faith in God's plan. So let's first look at two of those pieces, and then we're going to come back to read the text itself, so we can use those pieces as lenses through which to view the text. Okay, so the first piece here is from an unexpected place, from Masechet Kiddushin, and it has to do with the way in which it's proper for a man and woman to get married. So the Mishnah says in Mem Aleph Amud Aleph, Ha'ish mekadesh bo ubishlucho, that a person can betroth a woman, a man can betroth a woman himself directly by giving her something that's of value, or he can do it through an intermediary, through a messenger. Similarly, Haisha mitkadeshet ba ubishluchota, she can have someone receive something on her behalf and achieve that same status of being mikudeshet through a in-between. Okay. We'll just skip the rest of the Mishnah there and focus on the piece that is of import for us. Hashta, the Gemara says, Bishlucho mekadesh bo mivaya. So the Gemara says, listen, if you're able to use an agent to effect marriage, then why does it need to teach that you can do so? Obviously, if you can do it through an agent, you can do it yourself. So the Gemara says, Kiha Rav Safra Machrich Reisha, Rava Malach Shibuta, that the Mishnah writes both ways to teach that either way is valid, but it's actually better for a person to do the act of betrothal himself or herself, which is very much like Rav Safra, who instead of having his servants prepare for Shabbat, he himself would prepare the fish and the meat for the purpose of Shabbat. And so therefore we see the significance of direct involvement in a mitzvah being preferable. Ika de Amri, there are those that say, Beha isuranami itbe, that using an agent to effect marriage is going to not just be the lesser of two forms, but actually involve a prohibition, some sort of violation. Kid Rav Yehuda Amarav, the Amar Rav Yehuda Amarav, because this individual said, Asur la'adam she'ikadesh et isha ad shirena. It is forbidden for a person to marry a woman until they have first seen her. Shema yireba davar meguneh, lest he find something in her that is unpleasant for him. V'titkaneh alav, and then he hates her. Ve'rachmana amar ve'ahavta l'recha kamocha, and Hashem says that we should love each other. All the more so, we should love our wife. We should love our spouse. And if we're going to set ourselves up to be in a situation where there is disgust and hatred, then we're going to violate the most basic and fundamental relationship, the spousal relationship that we have. So what here is the reason that we need to see something or see somebody before committing to them?
Well, that's why the man checks the veil also before the
Okay,
ceremony.
so it's a little bit backwards because we actually put the veil on instead of checking underneath it, right? But the person who is meant to place the veil upon the woman is the husband to guarantee that he knows who's underneath it, right?
Case of Leah may come to mind.
I'm sorry, what was that, Bob?
Case of Leah may come to mind.
Yeah,
Because
Exactly
obviously,
where it comes from.
the
I don't know.
Badekin,
I don't know if that was a really kosher marriage.
yeah, right? The Badekin is a tikkun, a bit of a rectification for what went wrong with Yaakov and Rachel and Leah, right? And we see, the fact that he couldn't see her beforehand caused a lot of tumult in the, family dynamic, we could say. So there is a great risk at committing to something or to a relationship in the long term before doing due diligence and making sure that there is compatibility, right? And this compatibility is not even on a deep or emotional level, it's on a sort of visceral, physical level, right? That you enjoy the other person, that you think they're pretty, you think they're handsome. And that's important within the marital context. So suggests Rabbi Sachs, the same that applies to marriage between people also applies between a people and their land. The Jewish people were traveling from Mitzrayim to Eretz Yisrael, and they thought it was going to be a matter of days or weeks until they got there. And Moshe sends ahead people to make sure that they would see the land with their own eyes before committing to it. How else could they muster up the, let's just say, courage to fight the battles for conquering the land if they didn't know what it was that they were going to be getting? Right? They were about to marry a land they had not seen. And they had no idea what they were fighting for. And so that's piece number one, that the purpose of the Anashim, the purpose of these men being sent to the land was to ensure that they liked what was going to be there and to provide motivation for the road ahead. The second piece has to do with the specific term that is used to refer to this group of men. What is the term that is used to refer to them? Anyone remember?
Miraglin.
So that's what everyone
Miraglin.
thinks.
Scouts, right?
Spies looking
So-
into the land out.
Indeed, that's what everyone always thinks, that they are called Miraglim. But not once in Parshat Shlach are they referred to as spies or scouts.
No.
That is only later on in Devarim, when the story is recounted by Moshe, are they called Miraglim. And when the sin is referred to by Yehoshua and others, the term Miraglim is used. But in Parshat Shlach, I think it's Perek Yud Gimel, as we'll soon see, a wholly different word is used, and that's a tayar. What is a tayar? When you go into Israel and there are lines for tayarim, a tayar is a tourist.
Oh.
Oh.
And what's the difference between a miragel, a spy, and a tayar, a tourist?
You're going to enjoy as a tourist. You're looking for the positive.
Right. You want to go see all the highlights. You're looking for the best. It's a highlight reel of the country, right? When you go and visit Rome, you want to go see the forums. You want to see the Colosseum. That's the job of a tayar, to see, all of the 10 top, destinations on the Lonely Planet, guide for visiting Rome. If you're a spy, then you're going to go check out, the thickness of the walls around the Vatican.
The military aspects.
The military aspects, right. Okay. So where do we get this distinction between miraglim and tayarim? It first takes root in the way that the term miraglim is used in Sefer Breshit. So if you look at source number 2 here, we see Vayizkor Yosef et hachalamot, that Yosef remembers the dreams, Asher chalam lahem, that he had when he was a lad with his brothers. He was being bowed to through the sheaves and the stars. He was being submitted to by his older brothers. Vayomer aleihem, and he said to them, Raglimatem, you're spies. Lirot et ervat haaretz batem, you came to look at the land's nakedness. So what's the context here? Paint the scene for me. Who remembers what's happening at this moment?
Well, that's when the brothers don't recognize Yosef. He recognizes them. They've come to Egypt to get food because of the famine.
Exactly. And when he sees them, he accuses them of being spies. He remembers the dreams that they are meant to be subjugated to him, and so he leverages a complaint against them in which they will subjugate themselves to him. Because he has all the power and they have none. And so by claiming them to be spies, right, they will then, out of deference, bow to him and claim that they are not spies by showing their deference to him. So here, how does the term miragel or miraglim, how is it used or defined? Somebody who is looking to see all the vulnerable parts of the land. At ervat haaretz, the nakedness of the land. The Midrash says that Yosef's advisors reported to him that the 12 brothers came in 12 different entrances to the land of Egypt.
Well, there were only 10 of them, actually.
That's correct. I'm getting confused with the 12 miraglim, right? The 12 tayarim. But with the brothers at the first time, you're right. Binyamin is not there. And obviously, well, Yosef is there, but there is only 10 of them that enter the land. And the Midrash says that they entered in a way that they would not be detected, because they were worried that if they came as a whole group, it would be suspicious. So it backfired because they came in different entrances at the same time, and the patrol, the checkpoint patrol noticed that these, people wearing these, unique, Hebrew garments all came in on the same day, and they reported that to Yosef. So Yosef had good reason to leverage this accusation that you're spies, that you're coming to check out how we are vulnerable to attack. Okay, so from there we see that the word miragel is, as Bob was saying, has a military connotation to it. It's about seeing the points of weakness of the place that you are going to potentially conquer. Okay, so with that in mind, let's now start getting back to our parsha, and peeling away the differences between these two terms of a miragel and a tayar. I'll just point out before we even get to that linguistic distinction and the person who really draws it out, I'll just show you quickly that in Parshat Shlach itself, we have this word vayaturu, right? Over and over again. I think it's over a dozen times we have the shoresh of latur, of tayar, right? Tet, resh. So here in source number 4, we have a Debresha Moshe Lemor Shalach Lecha Anashim, right? They're not miraglim, they're just men of great esteem. The Yaturu et Haaretz, and they're meant to be, right, to look at the land with their own eyes. And then we have, once they come back, Vayishlach Otam Moshe Latur et Haaretz. I'm sorry, this is the mission that he gives them after they finally come to him. And what's the mission? Uri'item et haaretz mahi. You're just meant to describe what you see, right? When you go and look at all of the highlight reels of Eretz Canaan, come back with a photo book of the best. We don't need, anything other than that. Okay, so now that we've sort of confirmed that that's the language, that's the terminology that's used to describe these men, now let's get a bit deeper in terms of the linguistic difference between these two words. So the Malbim here in Parshat Shlach references a comment that he makes in Parshat Miketz, which is the story that we just read from with Yosef and the brothers. So here in source number 3, I'll read this. It's there was no translation available on Sefaria, so I'll read it in Hebrew and translate it in English. And then we're going to apply this distinction to the story of the 12 of the 12 anashim below. Okay, so shlach lecha anashim. I'll use the arrow to point along as we go. Shlach lecha anashim kvar be'arti. I have already explained the Parshat Miketz. Ki yesh shnei minei miraglim. There are really 2 types of scouts. Ha'am hamevakshim lahem makom lashevet. When a nation is looking for a place to live, a place to inhabit, a place to set up camp, sholchim tchila tarim latura ta'aretz hatovahi imra'a. They want to see, is this a place with natural resources? Is this a place with water? Is this a place with shade? Is this a place that has fruit? They want to know about the survivability of living in that kind of place, right? It's an assessment, it's an evaluation of the viability of living in that area. Achar sheshabu hatarim, after the, right, tarim as used here, right? Shulchim tchilat tarim, the scouts, we could call them. After you send scouts out, v'hodiu lahem shemushav haaretz tov lifnehem. They say the land is good. It checks all the boxes. It has all the resources that we need supplied to us. And they decide, you know what, we're going to go for this plot of land, ula kavsha, and we want to conquer it. Then, as a second stage, sholchim meraglim. Then you send spies lirot et arvat haaretz, to see the exposure, the vulnerability, the weak points, the nakedness of that land. Hainu shiar gilu. At the Makomot, they go in a covert way to look at the different places, she'ein haaretz mivutzeret, that it is not fortified, right? That there are places that they can enter, mivutzeret sham, kokach lekavsha misham, so that they can start the conquest from those places. Harishon nikratar, the first stage, the first mission, the first step of this process is considered a tar, like a scout or a tourist. Vasheni nikra meragel. And the second is called a meragel, a spy. Ki hatar mevakesh et hatov. The difference between them is that the tourist is always looking to see the good of the land, v'hamaragel mechapes hatara. And the meragel is looking for the bad of the land so that he can capitalize on their weakness. At ervat haaretz, the nakedness. V'yesh habdel b'shlichutam. There's a fundamental difference between these 2 types of missions, between these 2 types of people. Et hatarim yishalchu kol ha'am ki lahem nogea hadavar. So what are some of the differences? The first one is who sends scouts out? Who sends tourists to a place before deciding if they want to live there? The
Oh,
people.
yeah. I was thinking of Nefesh B'Nefesh or some group that sends Jews.
When you go on a pilot trip before making Aliyah,
Yeah.
you go yourself to check it out, right? You know, or perhaps you might send a family member, a parent, a sibling, a child, depending on your stage of life, right? Someone you trust, someone of great esteem, someone of repute, all right? Ve'et hameraglim yishlach tsar hatzava. But if you're trying to conquest something militarily, then who is going to do the sending?
The
Not-
leader.
A leader, a
not-
general.
right, the general, the army general. Because the army general knows to pick somebody who is qualified for the role. Someone who can get behind enemy lines without being noticed. They don't care if the general public knows who this person is. They probably prefer that they don't, so that they can be under the radar.
But
Right.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
isn't there a debate, and not a debate, but aren't there two ways that this is presented? One is that Moses asks God if he should send, or says the people want to be sent, or God tells Moses to send, versus the people
Right.
themselves.
Indeed. So that's a difference between how the story is presented in Parshat Shlach and how it's recounted in Sefer Devarim. In
Yeah.
Parshat Shlach, it seems like, we can just scroll down to see, right, that Hashem says to Moshe, you should send.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? So it seems like Hashem is going to Moshe, but then in Parshat Shlach, in Devarim, we see that Moshe says that you wanted, meaning the people wanted to send the spies.
That's what he tells God.
So it seems like Moshe is almost blaming the people for the sin of the spies because they insisted on them, right? But we see from that that actually this was meant to be a mission of tayarim, of tourists that were representing the people, not a military operation that was conducted by, I don't know, Yehoshua, who was the general of the Jewish army.
So last Shabbos, Rabbi Salzman gave a shir in which he talked about how the Jewish people began their complaining. And they were complaining, they've been 3 days in the desert. Yeah, they had the mun, but they wanted the quail and they wanted the this and they wanted the that. And it was brought out that mainly the complaining was that, they're out in the wilderness. They thought that they would just be, gone a week and then into this land and it's going to be great. But they're there and it's 3 full days in the desert with all of this, things that they're not used to. And that the complaints they weren't anything really serious, but they were just pretenses because they wanted to go back to what they knew, to the leeks and the quit meat and the this and the that, everything in Mitzrayim. So it was the beginning of the people's hearts not being ready to take on the new land. So that was all in last week's Parsha. So here, when God says, to Moshe, take for yourselves spies to look at. So like it says, so, go see where you're going, to kind of try to reinforce the people to say, oh, yeah, we're going to this place and it is going to be great, so that they would kind of forget about wanting to return to Egypt, that they would go forward. And that was probably the intention of them being sent to say all of these good things, so that the people wouldn't keep saying, no, we want to go back, we want to go back. Instead of complaining, they would be, oh, this is what it is, and it's not going to be too much longer, and everything's so beautiful like that. And that was the original intention. It didn't turn out that way,
Excited.
But yeah,
it was to get them excited about the future, because they were so hamstrung by the past. They were so weighed down by what was familiar. They just wanted to go back to the old menu that they had in Egypt because that's what they were used to, right? Change takes being able to see forward to a new stage and a new phase and to get excited by that. And so that was the purpose of the mission. Shlach lecha anashim, send people for yourselves to convince yourselves that you want what's coming.
So had
Right.
they come back with a good report, would we have then gone in that much sooner?
Well, we'll see, they did come back with a good report, but then they added on
Right.
and they did something that was beyond the scope of their mission.
I often think that psychologically they were not prepared. And when they said we look like, grasshoppers in their eyes, was sort of a psychological evaluation of their own abilities. And
Indeed.
these people were not humongous. I would think, they were probably normal sized people there. They weren't Levium. They weren't, abnormal.
Nice. Yeah.
It's all you perceive your own abilities in life. So
Right, they were insecure.
insecure.
Their self-perception was off. As Amy was saying, they really didn't believe in themselves. And so when a person doesn't believe in themselves, they go into, they want to do what's comfortable, what's familiar, right? Which is to go backwards in life to a stage where things appear to be more simple, even though there was no freedom and, no joy, or limited, we could say, So we've said that some of the differences between going and sending, scouts who are going to tour out to see what the good of the land is, and the mission to send spies on a military basis is going to be one of those differences, according to the Malbim, is going to be who sends the people, right? So is it the army, the head of the army, or is it the people themselves, right? And here the Shlach Lecha seems to be about you sending for yourselves, right? That's the first difference. The second difference with Bet over here is about the amount of people that you would send. If you're sending out a mission of tourists to scout out whether you want to choose this land or that land, how many people would you send? You would send quite a few because you want lots of good eyes to see all of the different, hot spots, all of the different highlights. Whereas if you're sending a military mission that you don't want to be noticed and you want to be right under the radar, how many are you going to send?
Maybe one or
Just a
two.
few. Yeah.
A couple.
And when we see that in the beginning of Sefer Yehoshua, when he's about to conquest, when he's about to actually start the military effort, he sends spies again. They're called Miraglim. And how many are there?
Two.
Two. Okay. If this was about spying the land militarily, there would not have been 12 people. That's not a strategic spy mission.
It's not too successful. You become a parent.
Yeah.
Everybody's new this year.
This was
Especially
a
with
PR
different clothing.
This was a publicity thing. This was a PR thing. This was about a pump-up mission. This is about getting people excited, right? This is a pilot trip kind of thing. So that's the second difference, right? And the third difference, we won't do it inside because time is a little short. The third difference is what kind of people would you choose for the mission, right? If it's a pump-up mission, then you want to send the leadership that are the most trusted, the people of great esteem, right? The people that everybody knows. Who are those people? The Nesi'im, the prince of each tribe. Those are the ones that are identified and sent by Moshe. Because, if somebody who represents your community, who you voted for, or, who you have confidence in, gives a positive report, you're much more likely to get behind that person's report than you would be if it's some stranger. Whereas if it's a military spy operation, then you, Dafka, don't want to send somebody who's well known. You subvert your effort, right? You want to send somebody who is trained in, in spying, right? In seeking out military weaknesses to take advantage of, right?
In addition to the leadership, I might want to send some people who see the positive and not the negative.
Right. Indeed. Right. And you would assume that people who are in leadership roles have that capacity to be optimistic, right? To see the best in people, to see the best in opportunities and places. It's not always the case, but that's
Right.
what you would hope in good, moral leadership, is people who can see the best and not, only harp on the worst. Okay. So those are the three differences that the Malbim outlines in terms of the differences between these two terms of miraglim and tayarim. And he sort of confirms this difference when the mission is recounted later in Devarim. At the very beginning, the word that is used to explain where the mission went wrong is vayich paru, right? I'll just read this inside. So it says in the beginning of Devarim, Kasher Amar Lahem Moshe, when Moshe says back to the Jewish people, that Hashem has given before you at the Aretz, the land, Alei Rash V'Tikravun, go and conquer it, to come close to me, V'Tikravun Alai Kulchem, V'Tomra, and then you said, Nishacha Nashim Afleinu, we should send spies, we should send men before us, and what did they do? Vayich Paru Lanu et Haaretz. What's Lachpor? Literally means to dig. Right? Vayich Paru is the same kind of term as Miragel, right? These people were sent to look at the good of the land, and what did they do? They actually dug beneath the surface, and they tried to do something that they weren't asked to do. Okay, so we see in the way that Moshe recounts the mission, by shifting from the word Latur et Haaretz, they shift to Vayich Paru, which is clearly more in the direction of Miragel than it is in the direction of Latur. Okay, so
They exceeded their authority.
yeah, they overstepped the mission. Okay, so let's look back. The Malbim fits all of this back into the psukim themselves, but let's actually read the psukim in the few minutes we have remaining, so that we can do this ourselves. Okay, so back to the last source here in Bamidbar Yud Gimel. So we've already read these first two psukim of Vaydaber Hashem Moshe Lemor Shlach Lecha Anashim. So what kind of people are these? These are the heads of the tribes, right? Anashim is Lashon Chashivut. These are important people, people of good rapport, people of good stature, because those are the trust agents that you would want to convey a positive account of the land to convince the people to fight for it. Okay? And so I skipped the list of all the Nisi'im, but that's the people that were chosen. I skipped all the names, but that was the list. And again, that underscores the purpose of this mission was to report back on the good that was observed. Okay? And when Moshe sends them, again, it's using the word Latur, and in Pasuk Yurchet, Uri'item et haaretz mahi. You're meant to see what the land is. The et ha'am hayoshev ba, look at the people. Hechazaku harafeh hama'at hu imrav. You are meant to see if the people are strong or not strong, right? You're meant to observe those things, right? But is this a military mission where you're meant to look at the, at their army, right? So we could argue that, because from a pshat level here, when Moshe is sending the people, this group of Tayarim, he does give them instructions which are a bit ambiguous. First, he says, just observe what the land has, right? Whether it is good or not good, right? But then he adds, and notice the people, and also in Pasuk Yutet, Uma haaretz asher hu yoshev ba hatovahim ra'ah, right? So that's that's on target in terms of, right, the mission for Tayarim. But then he says, Uma ha'arim hu yoshev bahena habamachanaim im b'mivtzarim, right? Are they the kind of cities that are open or fortified?
That's sort of a military viewpoint here. He's adding that in.
Right. So as you're pointing out, Bob, so this seems to be a bit misleading.
Yeah.
Right. So from a pshat level, this lens, I think, is selective, right? In the sense that the instructions that Moshe gives the Jewish people, this group of 12 men, at first is about use your eyes to observe, give us some eyewitness accounts of the land, look at the people, see if it's a good land, not a good land, right? And he says that also in Pasuk Chaf, right? Uma haaretz hashmenahi, is it a fat land, imraza, or a not, a land of paucity in terms of its natural resources? Ayesh ba eitzim ayin, are there forests with trees that could be used to build, right? V'itchazaktem ulakachtem mipri haaretz v'hayamim yimei bikurim navim, and look at the fruits, see what is available there, right? So we see that part of the mission is indeed this Tayar kind of tourist mission. But then in between those instructions, Moshe does share with them that they should notice things as they are looking at the land. They should notice if the people are strong or not strong, if the cities are open or walled, right? So from the instructions, it seems like there's a bit of a dual purpose to the mission, that it is to see if the land is good, but also to sort of help with understanding what their military strength is, right?
But the other interpretation could easily have been, see how the people are living now. Do they have to put in a lot of effort to do their farming? Do they have to build walls for protection because there are enemies? Are they big and strong because they have to be out in the field toiling, or are they kind of resting on their laurels because the food is just like coming to them? So just, when you go to see a place, you see how the natives are living, not so much, eventually they are going to conquer, but see, what the lifestyle is really like. I mean, you go to Israel, with a dream and a hope, I'm going to be near all of these ancient places and whatever, but you've got to see day to day how to actually live there, or you get a major reawakening when you actually go and try to live there.
Right. But if that was the purpose, then why did they need to notice if the walls were, if the cities had walls or not?
I think it
Well,
was
to see
very
are you
tough.
constantly fighting enemies, or are you just, you're open and loving?
Indeed. So that's how you could read Rabbi Sax's approach into the pshat, to say that it's really all a function of learning the lifestyle, making sure that it's a good place for us to live, right? But you could also understand some of those components of the request for the mission to be from a military standpoint. Meaning, I'm saying you can understand how the Anashim might have misinterpreted their marching orders.
Right.
But we see.
Well, what if they were accurate then? What if they were big guys and fortified cities?
Let's take a look at the report back to see how that reflects on how they understood their mission. So when the spies return, here in Pasuk Chafeh, Ashuvu mitur ta'aretz, so they went from touring the land, miketz arba'im yom. So it was a long pilot trip of 40 days. And they came to Moshe and to Aaron, and they returned and showed them the fruit of the land. Vayisapru lo here in Pasuk Chaf Zayin, 27. Vayisapru lo vayamru banu el haaretz asher shalachnu v'gam zavat chalav udvash hi v'zeh pirya. They said it's a good land. It's got the natural resources. The fruit are delicious and large, right? That seems to be the first sort of part of their mission, and perhaps the whole mission, which was just to get the people excited about the next stage in their history. We have a lot to look forward to, guys, because look at the size of these grapes, right? It's a land flowing of milk and honey. What else do you want for yourselves and your grandchildren? Okay, so let's go, right? That should have been the end of their report. But then they continue. Efes ki'az ha'am. However, this big but here, that the people who are there, hayoshe ba'aretz v'harim b'tzurot gedolot ma'od, they have large walls around their cities. V'gam yaldei ha'anak ra'inu shem. And we saw that their giants and their kids are also really tall. Right? So then the second half of the report is a military report. And then they also give their evaluation and say, we cannot conquer them. And that's when Kalev and Yehoshua says, no, we can conquer them, because remember, God promised us that he was going to do that. This was not a military operation, guys. This was just about getting us excited. God's going to take care of the battle. But the 10 spies, or the 10 people, thought they were spies, and they overstepped their mission. And they ended up giving a military report and saying that they made the assessment that we can't overcome the military strength of the people in the land. So what Rabbi Sachs, does for us in terms of reading this narrative is to look at it from the perspective of the desire and the just desire, meaning the warranted desire of the people to see the land for themselves before conquering it. Just like a husband and wife should see each other before making a long-term commitment, so too, it's understandable that the Jewish people would want to have trusted individuals give them an eyewitness report on what the land has to offer them. Where they went wrong was where they took this on not as Tayarim, but as Miraglim. And perhaps they misunderstood some of Moshe's marching orders. Perhaps Moshe could have been a little bit clearer in his communication in terms of what it was that he was expecting of them. Right? But clearly Yehoshua and Kalev understood what was expected of them, and the 10 others did not, or they did and went beyond the scope of the mission. So we can sort of appreciate what went wrong, that sometimes we are just meant to describe what we observe and not provide a assessment or an opinion on something that we weren't asked to opine upon, right? Oftentimes where things go awry in a relationship is when we provide judgment or rebuke when we weren't asked for it. Sometimes we're just meant to share our observations, what we see, and that is all. And so we can perhaps take lesson in our own lives from what went royally wrong with the story of the Anashim in Parshat Shlach by appreciating that we should stay within our lane and do what we are asked to do instead of veering out. Sometimes, of course, there are extenuous circumstances, but most of the time it's best to do our jobs, and we get in trouble when we try to do something that we're not skilled at, that we're not expected and meant to do.
Would it have been okay if the spies had simply said, and the people who live there are huge, but not talked about that there's no way we could overcome them or fight against them, but just reported on what they saw, not in terms of the land, but also in terms of the inhabitants.
I think that would have been much more palatable for Moshe to receive, right? Because they were asked to see, to observe the land, right? Re'item, you're meant to just tell us what you see, but not to give the evaluation of lo nuchal reshet et haaretz, that we can't conquer it.
Okay,
So while the people might have received, while the nation might have received, a report about the large muscles of the inhabitants in a way that scared them, they, would not have been deflated by the assessment that we can't conquer them, because they might be strong, but God's stronger, right?
okay,
So meaning that giving just an objective assessment, not putting, objective, I'm thinking of when I was writing SOAP notes as a therapist, that you put objectively what you do, what you see, but you don't put any kind of assessment with it.
Indeed, that's the line that was crossed.
right.
That's the line between being a tourist and being a spy. And the people who went on this mission were sent as tourists, and they came back as spies.
Mm.
Okay, well, thank you everyone so much
Yes.
for the great insights. This is going to be the last Parsha class of this season, as we're going to be on summer break for about 2 months. And we'll probably come back beginning of September, but I'll give us a heads up in terms of when the first class will be. I just want to confirm that this time still works for people, 9:30
Yes.
on Tuesday mornings. It seemed to work this year. And next year, we're going to at least start and see, how it goes, looking at Vivian Skolnick's commentary on the Parsha. She is a psychiatrist who used some of her professional experiences and studies in the field of psychology to interpret different dynamics within the Parshiot. So certainly in Breshit, there's a ton of excellent, pieces here that are really insightful. And I'm looking forward to going through that safer with you next year.
Will you be
Name of that book?
putting in the chat the chapters, or should we buy the book?
It's called The Biblical Path to Psychological Maturity. Psychological insights into the weekly Torah readings.
Sorry, what is it called? The physical.
The Biblical Path to Psychological Maturity, Psychological Insights into the weekly Torah readings. So like this year, I'll probably prepare a source sheet with the verses and the midrashim that she uses, and we'll go through those sources inside, and then I'll provide some of her commentary and analysis, outside.
Thank you.
Okay, well, wish everyone a wonderful rest of the day and happy summer. And
Happy
looking
summer.
forward to seeing everyone and continuing to learn in different ways over the course of the summer.
Yes, yeah. Never foolish lame to Dan. He should.
Yeah,
So
refuah
hopefully, my
shleima.
Dan.
I was going to say just that, and so thank you for beating me to it. We're thinking of you, Dan. We know we can see you now. And for some reason, we can't get you to off mute, but we can see in your facial expression that you're doing okay.
I finally figured it out.
Oh,
Oh,
good, Dan.
hey.
Okay,
I
good. Give us a
sorry, I had
report.
a doctor walked in the middle, so I had to put the phone down.
Oh, okay.
All right,
How you
thank
doing?
Good chance I'm coming home today, so it'll just be one night.
Good.
Yeah,
Okay.
Glad to hear it.
so we'll see. Yeah, I'll let you know, Rabbi.
Okay,
Okay.
well, refuah shleima, and we're glad that you're yourself, and we're hoping to get you fully back soon.
Yeah, I like to come to class from different locations. So I
Yeah.
figure this will-
That you do.
Yeah, we knew that was the whole reason why you went into the hospital last night. So.
absolutely.
Okay,
All right, thank you.
okay,
Yeah.
take
Be
care.
well.
Bye.
Good week.
Okay, thank
All
you,
right,
everybody.
See you, sure. Okay, bye-bye.
065, 699. Eight 34, 295.